When I think about my path down that road, to me, it's the long way. And it was something that my dad stressed in me. He thought it was important that you focus on responsibility and adding value more so than titles or politics. And kind of what I mean by that is when you are afforded an opportunity to work with a team, really trying to do a great job at the responsibilities that are given to you, and knowing that if you do a great job at that, then more opportunities will be afforded to you.
Well, I'm excited about today's guest. It's Jeff Howard, who is the defensive pass game coordinator, defensive backs coach for the Cleveland Browns. And we're going to talk about defending intent and a lot of the things that he does to develop the unit, the back end of the defense for the Cleveland Browns. So, Coach, I'm really glad you're here today. Thank you for taking the time.
Keith, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be able to speak with you today. I think we got a lot of good questions that we're going to be able to go over, kind of dive deep into a lot of different areas of what we think is important as a coach.
You started out as an assistant defensive back and linebackers coach at Odessa Permian High School in Texas. Coach, looking back at that time, what was it that drove you to become a coach? What was your why?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think staying attached to your why is so infinitely important and something that I really try to stress with my guys, and I try to get them to circle back to that and think about that. But personally, my why, whenever I got into coaching, was really to be involved in the game and serve players for their success on and off the field. The game is so important, and it's something that's been involved in my life ever since I was young, all the way through my adolescence. My father was a small college coach throughout his career, and I benefited from that. I was able to be out at practice every day, travel with the team on the weekends, on those Friday trips. I used to skip school and go with the team, and I used to think that was just so much fun. And, and then he also gave me the opportunity to, I worked in the equipment room, filled in the end zone copy when I was in 8th grade, and then just even going back and holding the cords on the sideline. But, the game has been so important to our family. And when I got done with college, initially I wasn't going to end up getting into coaching, but it had been something that I wasn't used to not being around. So that was how I ended up taking that first job, why I took that first job, and that purpose of being involved with the game, trying to do it at a high level, and then trying to impact my players in a positive way, both on and off the field.
Has that evolved for you over time, or is that still the same thing that it was back when you were at the high school level?
Yeah, great question. And I think it's similar. The expectations of a high school coach and of an NFL coach of what you're trying to accomplish with your players is a little bit different. I can think back to my days in high school. It's so much more involved with the whole person. Football was a small part of what you're trying to benefit, the kid, or produce positively in their life as far as their play on the field, but then you're also trying to make sure that they're doing well in their classes. And then as well, for those kids in Odessa, you wanted to make sure that their immediate needs were taken care of. I can still remember one of the main things at Permian, I used to drive over at 5:30, 6 o'clock to try to go pick kids up for workouts and stuff. But, the program was so important to developing those kids. It was awesome. I have really fond memories and good relationships there. As far as guys in the NFL, I think it's adjusted a little bit. I think I spend the majority of my time, all my guys' needs are met. So I end up spending a lot of my time with them on just developing their game so that they can go out and be successful on the field on Sundays. And we know that if they take care of that, then, not only are they taken care of, but, their future families as well. And so it's still servant-based. I think that's what I try to do as a coach. I really want to have a positive impact on guys' lives, but it's just a little bit different in the NFL than it was in high school.
I grew up in a similar way, being the son of a high school football coach, and can remember, like you talked about, man, being in the equipment room, you knew how to fix every helmet, shoulder pad, all of it, right?
Right.
You become ingrained in every part of the game, just absorbing that. Mm-hmm. But you do have to learn as a coach. It does change over time, and you're looking at your learning of the game. What did you major? I know you were a DB coach and linebackers coach, but what would you say, was a major for you early on?
Being, like you said, coming from a coaching family, I was afforded opportunities to learn about the game just seeing so many games and practices and sitting in meetings. I think you learn a lot. My dad was a college offensive coordinator, ran the triple option, and then at the end of his career, he actually switched over and they ran the air raid with tempo. So I was able, I was able to see it all. And I think that was being a defensive coach and a defensive player. I always talk about defending intent. And I think learning about the offense, what they're trying to do, what they're trying to accomplish, and how things work allows you to defend things better. So I would think, early on, I would say I majored in that just growing up. I played in a 4-2-5 scheme, very similar to, what people would say traditionally is the TCU 4-2-5. I played in that. And then whenever I started in high school, coaching at Permian High School, we were a 3-4 quarters-based team. And I think people from down in Texas would know it more as like the Katy 3-4, but that's what we did. We had a lot of formation adjustment defenses, but that was kind of where my basic knowledge of the game started from adolescence all the way into, college and my first job.
So obviously your dad was a mentor in the game, but as you said, he was an offensive coach for you. Where did you really get mentored and learn more of the defensive side of the game?
It's so hard to tailor into, single people. There's so many people that impact you in your career. I think Darren Allman, who's now the head coach at Nacogdoches in Texas, he gave me my first job. Being able to coach at the high school level, coach and teach, it's given me a base understanding that I still use today. And it's a lot of different things that just be able to handle kids and coach kids. He's a great mentor for that, and also taught me some defensive stuff. Other people that mentored me, whenever I ended up going to Texas Tech, Chad Glasgow, we ran the 4-2-5 my first couple years there. And then from there, Art Kaufman and John Lovett came in and coached defense at Texas Tech, worked with them, worked with the DBs, and then I coached the safeties my last year. Big key points I think about those guys, because we ended up finishing, I think in 2012, we ended up playing some pretty good defense at Tech. And I think my main takeaway from that is, Coach Lovett came in and really stressed the fundamentals of playing technique. And we taught guys how to play press coverage. We had a couple guys, one of the guys I had at Permian who ended up being a walk-on. And we had another corner that ended up being an offensive player. But we ended up making it work and really teaching them technique, hone in on technique, not really get too crazy with scheme. We had enough answers, the compliments of what we were doing, but getting those kids to really, believe in the technique that we were playing and stress fundamentals, and we got a lot better. And it was cool to be a part of that process. Going into the NFL, been a part of a lot of different things, seen a lot of different schemes in my 10 years. I started off in a Tampa 2 scheme with Leslie Frazier. And then from there, I spent the majority of my NFL career with Mike Zimmer and his 4-3 system, where we played, 3 Jade or match 3. And he's probably known a lot for his palms fire pressures. And then, getting into Cleveland, I think play a little bit of mix of everything. We have a lot of different coaches from a lot of different places. I think Seattle 3 would be kind of our base point, but, we do. Our defensive coordinator, Joe Woods, was at Denver when they won the Super Bowl under Wade Phillips, and we do some of that stuff as well. We've incorporated a little bit of what I did in Minnesota. And then, we also have some basis, coverage concepts in the Vic Fangio system and odd fronts and, back end disguises. But I think we're kind of eclectic mix in Cleveland, but it's afforded me a lot of good learning opportunities with a lot of good coaches on our staff. And I think Coach Woods does a tremendous job of really listening to the room and having a consensus. And then, we're always going to figure out what's best for us, and then everybody's on board. But what it does is it kind of gives everybody, a baseline understanding of a lot of different concepts. So I know it's a little bit of a long-winded answer, but, I'm very appreciative of the opportunities I've been afforded learning the game, and it's been so important in my career and something that I've really, try to be intentional about.
Well, and you've certainly absorbed a lot. You've learned a lot over the time. You've been in different systems. Obviously, guys now, like you said, at the Browns, in that defensive room, bringing all kinds of things to the table as well. So you're learning an immense amount of knowledge of the game. In looking at your approach to learning, What tips do you have for coaches to be able to learn such an immense amount of knowledge of the game?
Yeah, great question. I think just that the focus on being intentional every day. I remember back in high school, because even when I was coaching high school, I enjoyed the process, but I always wanted more. And I've always had this drive in me to want to compete at the highest level. And so I would really try to invest every day in doing something. So I'd spend I was like, if I could spend an hour each day, what would that look like? I remember those old clinic talk books. I would, in my free time, I'd read those and take notes on it, or find a playbook online, or, different websites that had, different people chat groups, and then, trying to get as much film as I could, cut ups. And then I always made it especially when I was in high school, I always made college visits like a priority. So like in the spring, I'd always take off. When I was at Permian, one year we went to Florida, one year we went to Notre Dame, one year we went to Texas, but really just kind of investing in that and understanding that knowledge is so powerful. So it's kind of a long haul. I think if you enjoy it, it makes it easier. It's a lot of fun. And then just, to be a curious thinker and understand that there's different ways you can do things. And I enjoy that part of the game, being able to talk and ask questions to different people to see kind of how they do it. But I think at the bottom line, being intentional, investing your time, and then trying to engage as many people as you can.
Well, and it's a great game to be curious about, because there's so much out there. You mentioned your dad going from option to air raid, such a wide ends of the spectrum there. So it just shows how much there is to learn. I know I first met you at the QB Collective, essentially a 1 day or 2 day quarterback camp. And, there's a defensive pass game coordinator there. So taking advantage of opportunities really outside your realm too. How important is it to you to really learn all the other parts of the game as well, rather than just getting honed in on, I'm just a defensive guy, this is it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, not only getting locked into a position, but, try to know the bigger picture. Being around Coach Zimmer really showed me that. He was outstanding, his ability to be able to coach all three levels of defense. So, and that was something I always aspired to as I was sitting through those meetings, is trying to figure out how is a D lineman playing a block, because we're all intertwined and we're all put in stressful situations. And understanding, having empathy for, different positions, how they're taught, what are they supposed to do, and then how is it all intertwined, is knowledge that I always thought, and I thought it was helpful. Going to the offensive side of the ball, I think it's so important that you understand how the other side thinks. How do they assess situations? What are they trying to get done? What is their intent? And what are they trying to attack on defense? A big part of what I believe in defensively is defending intent. And I don't think you really truly understand intent until you can peel back what the other side is actually doing. So going back to it, your question, that being curious, I think is so important. Try to get different perspectives from all different angles gives you the best way to be able to solve problems.
And I'm going to come back to that idea of defending intent in a little bit. A couple questions before we get to that. You've been able to learn the game and climb the ranks, as we mentioned, starting at Odessa Permian at the high school level, then an off-field job, and then on the field at Texas Tech, then moving to the NFL with the Vikings, advancing from assistant to the head defensive backs coach, and then at the Browns now, pass game coordinator, defensive backs coach. What did you do to network and help you advance through those different levels of the game?
When I think about my path down that road, to me, it's the long way. And it was something that my dad stressed in me. He thought it was important that you focus on responsibility and adding value more so than titles or politics. And kind of what I mean by that is when you are afforded an opportunity to work with a team, really trying to do a great job at the responsibilities that are given to you, and knowing that if you do a great job at that, then more opportunities will be afforded to you. And I really try to take that as my main focus, making sure that relationships are important, but I am not in relationships for my betterment. it's important for me to serve those people that help me out. I want to be able to give something back to them. And that's kind of the way that I've kind of navigated it. So I would say, from a networking standpoint, for my path, I have a lot more close friends than I would probably say like widespread friends. I try to go deep with the people that I do know, and I want them to know that they can trust me, and they can trust me on game day, and they can trust me at any end of time. And so going down that path, it's probably taken me a little bit longer than most, but it's something that I've also been afforded a lot of great learning experiences through that time, and it put me in a good position to be successful at where I'm at.
You've been able to take that knowledge and that strong foundation in this game and be able to move yourself forward. But a big part of this really is the mindset. What's your mindset in your approach to the game as a coach?
Yeah, that's such a great question. For all of us who do this, being a coach is as much of a passion as it is anything. It's not just a job. It's something we enjoy, we love. To me, there's really three things that set my mindset as a coach. And that's one is to serve, two is to teach, and then three is team. So serving, caring for others around us, knowing that this game, for us to be successful as a team, we all have to serve the greater good, and understanding what our role is and doing the best of our ability, and then trying to put others on our team in situations to be successful and be able to mentor them and be leaders. And so serving is one. Teaching, I love teaching. I love taking complex things or sharing a vision and then trying to simplify that so that people can go out and execute that. Teaching, the game, techniques, schematics, everything, really even psychology, mindset to my players. And then lastly, I say team, but it's really bringing people together for a common goal, really setting that vision for what do we want to look like, setting a culture for what does it look like day in and day out, and then getting that final result, the wins that we're all looking for, success for all of our players. So that's kind of the mindset as a coach.
For your players, what's the mindset that you want them to take out onto the field, and how do you coach that?
So I have this sign that we have in our room, and it basically, on top of it, it says identity. And it basically goes through, what do we want to be known for? And in this game, it's not about the media. It's not about Twitter hype. It's really about what you put on tape. And so I want my guys to be able to have a set mindset so that whenever they go out on the field, that we can put great play on tape as a unit and as them for individually. But to do that, I think whenever it's game day, we do have to have a mindset. And what I want my guys to be focused on is, one, being confident in their process, being confident in their ability, and then confident in the role that they have on our team, that they can go out there and be successful in that role and help us win. I want them to be aggressive, having a killer mentality. On game day, there's no, we all know that there's no niceness. I want them to be able to attack it. And then being focused and observant. We're not going to get so geeked out of our mind that we can't focus on what we need to accomplish and that we don't observe how the game's going or what our opponent's doing and being able to adjust off of that. And then my last point, I want them to be able to attack success and not focus on avoiding failure. I think kind of in our society now, it's kind of like, how do I look? Well, I don't want to look bad. I don't want them to think bad about me. I don't want my guys to focus on that. I really want them, if we've done what we've done in preparation, I want them to attack success. I want them to go out there and be the best version they can. Understand it's not going to be perfect, but we're going to work through it. We're going to fight through it. And I think if we're doing that as a unit and as a group, we're going to be successful at the end of the day more times than not.
We're always looking for leaders in this game. So as a coach, it's just necessary that you lead. How would you describe yourself as a leader?
That could be a topic in itself that we could talk about for a long time. There's so much that goes into leadership, and it's something that I think is so important, not only for leadership as a coach, but you really want to develop leadership on your assistants, and you want to develop leadership with your guys as players, because I think player-led teams end up being great teams that you have positive, strong voices in the locker room is so important. But I think a lot of times coaches can be the gatekeepers, so to say, and it's like, I have leaders, I don't have leaders. Well, what are we doing to develop leaders? And I think that's so important. But, what does leadership look like? It's so many different things. It's focus, vision, having knowledge of the game, knowledge of your players, being able to communicate effectively. Something that I've learned is don't say 5 words when 3 words will do, especially with your coaching points and with those things. I think having loyalty, being accountable, and then something that I think is winning football is being authentic and being sincere. I talk about serving players, caring for your players. I generally do care about them. I want them to be successful, not only in our situation, but in life. And I think that, there's winning edge to that when it's not just a business all the time. And then being open-minded, being able to empower others, being trustworthy. And then something that I've worked on lately is kind of a big buzzword is emotional intelligence, or basically having empathy for others in the situations that they're in. And I think that's so important because at the end of the day, it's getting people to go all in the same direction. If we can get everybody going in the right direction, if it's a clear vision with clear expectations, I think we can get there. But there's a lot of different things with leadership. I think leadership is so important and something I try to get better at, each and every day.
So a coach wears many hats, and one of those hats is teacher. When you are in your meeting room, when you're in the classroom, you are a classroom teacher. So for you, what do you do that makes your room and the people in it successful for your jobs? It's easy to get up there and just watch film, but how are you going to utilize that time to really set those guys up for success?
I think it's so much more than scheme. Being intentional with your actions, giving those guys a voice, coaches and players, making sure the vibe of the room in my room isn't like dictator, like talking down to you, probably the way that we were taught to as we were growing up, but it's more kind of being inclusive, like trying to have a conversation. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm not on the field. My guys are on the field. So I need them to be able to own all the information that I'm giving to them. And to do that, we need to conversate. They need to be able to process it, but I need to know that they understand it. And so if they can have those things in their mind in the classroom, then I think you can be able to go out on the field and get them accomplished. But teaching is so infinitely important, but teaching isn't just, hey, here's the information, you digest it. It's how can I find ways to help you digest that information? How can I package it? How can I organize it? How can I communicate it in a way that you can effectively put it in your mind and be able to go out there and execute it? So empathy, something else. I think being able to coach with your players' perspective in mind, especially when they're out on the field, is so important. Like go through the process of, okay, where's my alignment? Where are my eyes? And then what are the reactions that I'm supposed to meet? And then how do you fit amongst the other players? Like in the back end, we got 5 guys playing on the field the majority of the time, maybe 6. How do those pieces work together? How does one position see, a route one way? Does that work with how the other players seeing that route as well? But being able to work as a cohesive unit, I think, it starts in the classroom and it starts with that culture and it starts with having a room that, guys that we're having those conversations. I think that's important to that.
So if we were to ask some of your players to describe you as a coach, what do you think they would say about you?
I'd hope for them to say that I'm authentic, that I have a vision, something that, a buzzword I say in our room is stay ahead of the play. Mentally, I'd like to say that I stay ahead of the play for myself and them. Try to look ahead for potential issues that we're facing in games, and then be able to coach us and put us in the best situations possible. I like for them to think that I'm consistent, good communicator. It's important to me. I'm urgent. And at the end of the day, I'm someone that'll fight for you. I think anybody that I work with, I want them to know on game day or if you need somebody that, Jeff Howard's going to have your back. That's very important to me. And I hope that's something that they all see. A combination of having knowledge, communicating, and then being a fighter. I think those are kind of the things that I would hope that they would say that I am as a coach.
Are there any tools or technology that are indispensable to you doing your job at an elite level?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think when people think about tools, it's kind of like, what are the gadgets, gizmos or whatever. And I think the more I've coached, the more understanding that the indispensable tools are the people that you work with, whether that be coaches, players. People win games. It's not scheme, it's not tactics, it's not techniques. It's people coming together with a common purpose in mind, working together. That's what wins games. That's what drives people to fight for one another. And I think, that's the indispensable tool. And so making sure that people understand that they're valued, keeping that open line of communication with them. Another kind of cool thing that happened this last off season is, one of my players, John Johnson, came in and we had a conversation, and he was able to share, with a room, a quote that he felt was really important to him, something that he learned. And I think it kind of fits this. Chuck Noll said back in the day, it said, the mercenaries will always beat the draftees, but the volunteers will crush them both. And I think that's such a powerful statement, because it's like a group of people that believe in something, that have a common goal, that are doing it together, I think are very strong. And, that's what I want our group to be in. And I think that's something that we've seen a little bit in Cleveland in the DB room. And it's something that I want to, continue to stress is, the guys that volunteer, who believe what they're fighting for, are always going to beat the mercenaries, the guys that are playing for money, and they're always going to beat the guys that are just doing it because someone told them to do it. And so we want to be those volunteers, those guys that are fighting for one another, so that we can be successful.
I love that answer. And earlier in the week, we had a podcast where I shared a chapter from Woody Hayes' book written in 1973 called You Win With People. And man, when you read that today, that was 1973. You look at all that's going on in our world, and he's talking about the different things that, were affecting them. It's society at the time, and it's like, man, that could be right now. And I think, for that answer, I love it. You win with people. It is about people. And, I think Woody Hayes is just an incredible teacher of the game, and that's why I love reading that stuff and enjoy sharing that here on the podcast too. So it reminded me of that when you said, the people. So I appreciate that answer.
Absolutely.
So we always set our players up with routine, and we go through every minute of practice and have our routines there. But for you as a coach, what's the daily routine you have that sets you up for a successful practice?
Going back to the process, what is the process to get to a successful practice? And I was thinking about it, you study, you're studying your opponent. You're trying to figure out, what you think they're going to do against you, which basically drives the plays that you're going to practice. It drives the scheme that you're going to run. It drives the techniques that you're going to play, what personnel packages you might do. So I think that studying is so infinitely important, of studying, knowing yourself, but also knowing your opponent through that game plan process. And then being able to communicate that to others in a succinct, concise way. Something that Coach Stefanski, I think, does a tremendous job with is when he communicates, he does a great job of keeping the main thing. So it's succinct, it's concise, it's to the point, so that everybody, when they leave that room, they understand what coach was trying to say. He's trying to get this across. And I think being able to do that in a meeting room is so important. And then being able to take that information out to the field, and then building drills, whether it be individual drills, walkthrough drills with multiple units working together, building those drills so that you can practice those schemes, practice those techniques, working with one another. And then ultimately, you finish with a team segment where you're working those concepts. And then being able to go back and correct it, and then kind of repeating the process. So having a successful practice, in my mind, is going through all of that. I want to stress my players in practice. I think sometimes you get in the world where you always want you go out there and you want it to look perfect every time, and it's not. But that's not a bad thing. I think being able to go through the process, it's practice. We want to have that growth mindset. We're always getting better, taking those failures, being able to work from them, and then if we're continually getting better. I think that's the goal of what we're trying to do.
I know home and away work differently for you guys, but when you look at your game day routine as the coach, right, is there anything you really like to do consistently week to week that is preparing you to go out there and mentally perform everything you need to do as a coach?
On game day, I wake up, I always get a workout in. I like to sweat. It's kind of my way to compete. I can't go out on the field anymore and compete, but I'm competing with myself. I like working out, lifting, running, doing that. From there, I go back and spend some time looking at the game plan, looking at certain situations, and then going through film, whether that's watching a game, whether that's watching cut-ups, going through my notes, back through it, just kind of refresh on your mind, who's your opponent, what is their situational identity, and then how are we trying to combat that? What are we trying to get done? Trying to keep that at the forefront of your mind so that you can go out on the field and kind of play with anticipation. I always want to be ahead of my players. I always want to be able to, see the game for what it is or what we think it's going to be and then be able to adapt. But being able to study pregame, I like doing that. So I'll go back by myself, hang out by myself, listen to some music, and then get ready to go. But that's really my routine.
Nice. What's a song that's always on the playlist for you?
I'm kind of crazy like that. I got a little bit of everything, but I kind of like, I'm a hip hop before the game guy. It kind of sets my mentality. I want my guys to have that killer instinct. I want a little bit of that edge too when I go out on the field, and that's something that I have. It's just because we're judged by what we do on game day, and I want to make sure that I'm attacking it. I'm doing everything that I can possibly do to put our guys in situations to be successful. But the other part of it is I want to be able to pull the trigger on decisions. Like if you see something, I want to be able to make the decision. I want to be able to attack it. I don't want to sit back and be passive and let things happen. So that's a little bit how I set my mind before the game.
I was the same way. My game day playlist was much different than what I'd listen to during the week. So
yeah, I love music. It's something that I really enjoy, and I like all kinds of different music genres. Game day is hip hop, but I like worship music during the week. I listen to classical music, listen to pop a little. Especially when I'm in my room studying. Watching film, drawing cards. I got music going on all the time, different types. But yeah, I definitely appreciate that. I always got the headphones in.
That's part one of our interview with Coach Jeff Howard, and we were fortunate enough that he spent some time with us to go into detail about some other things. So tomorrow, we're going to get into his idea of defending intention. We'll talk about how he thinks about organizing practice, his coaching cues, all the different things that he does as a coach, including some of the things he thinks about as the pass game coordinator. So tune in tomorrow for the second half of this one, and be sure to follow all we're doing on coachingcoordinator.com and follow me on Twitter at Coach K. Grabowski.